The grand chamber of the Galactic Council stretched upward in sweeping spirals of iridescent crystal, each curve designed to remind visitors of their insignificance. Chief Representative Sarah Chen had always found the architecture trying too hard, like a peacock's display to mask an uncertain heart. She sat with perfect posture in the human delegation section, 200 Earth representatives arranged in precise rows. The Council's charges against humanity flickered through the chamber's holographic displays, each projection a symphony of light and motion that would have impressed her more if she hadn't seen better special effects in her daughter's school projects. Violation 17 Beta, intoned High Counselor, angst, their crystalline appendages catching the light. Implementation of non-standard terraforming protocols on Mars. Sarah's lips quirked slightly. The violation in question had transformed the red planet from a dusty wasteland into a habitable world in half the time the Council's approved methods would have taken. The fact that humans had accomplished it by introducing genetically modified lichens instead of using the Council's expensive atmospheric processors had nothing to do with the complaint, she was sure. Violation 23 Alpha, continued another counselor, this one a floating mass of translucent tentacles. Development of unauthorized faster-than-light calculations. Of course they'd bring that up. Humanity's mathematical models had made FTL travel 30% more efficient. The fact that it had also made it far cheaper, threatening the Council's monopoly on approved drive systems, was surely coincidental. The list continued, each violation a testament to human ingenuity. Using modified bacteria to clean ocean pollution. Developing AI systems that worked alongside human consciousness instead of replacing it. Creating art that combined multiple species' perceptual ranges, leading to what the Council termed cultural contamination. Sarah noticed her colleague, Dr. Marcus Webb, suppressing a yawn. She shared his sentiment. They'd expected this day would come, had prepared for it since humanity's first contact with the Council 50 years ago. The science had been there from the start. The Council's insistence on proper procedures, their thinly veiled concerns about humanity's hasty progress, their increasingly restrictive technology sharing protocols. The Council has reached its decision, announced the speaker, a towering being of pure energy contained within an ornate framework of rare metals. Their voice resonated with artificial gravity, an effect that Sarah suspected came from hidden speakers rather than actual power. Humanity's continued deviation from established norms threatens the stability of galactic civilization. Sarah's smile widened slightly. The Council had never quite understood that what they called stability, humanity called stagnation. Therefore, by unanimous vote, the Council requires Earth and all human colonies to submit to direct oversight. A team of Council administrators will be assigned to all human governmental and research institutions. All technological development will require prior Council approval. All unofficial contact with other species will be restricted. The speaker paused, probably expecting protests or pleas. The human delegation sat in perfect silence. You have 24 standard hours to begin implementation. Failure to comply will result in complete economic isolation. No Council member species will be permitted to trade with human worlds. No human ships will be granted passage through Council-controlled space. No human communications will be carried on Council networks. Sarah glanced at the ornate timepiece on her wrist, a wedding gift that combined Swiss craftsmanship with Centaurian crystalline technology. The Council had already made their biggest mistake. They'd given humanity a full day's warning. She looked up at the chamber's elaborate ceiling, admiring how the abstract patterns contained a hidden mathematical sequence. Humanity had spotted it within their first week of Council contact. It had taken the Council's original architects 3 centuries to design it. The speaker was still talking, outlining the details of their demands. Sarah didn't need to listen. Instead, she sent a single encoded quantum pulse through her neural implant. Execute Protocol Omega. Across Earth and every human colony, hundreds of thousands of sealed orders were being opened. Decades of preparation were shifting into action. The Council thought they were imposing restrictions. In reality, they were setting humanity free. The council chamber's artificial gravity felt heavier than usual, as if the weight of expectations pressed down on every being present. Thousands of holographic eyes watched from across the galaxy, representatives from every spacefaring species waiting to witness humanity's submission. They had all seen this scene before. The council would demand, and others would bend. Sarah Chen's quantum implant hummed with incoming data. Across Earth and its colonies, Protocol Omega was cascading through systems that had waited years for this signal. But her face remained serene, offering nothing to the council's searching gazes. The speaker's energy form pulsed with subtle patterns that Sarah recognized as smugness. Does humanity's representative wish to address the council's terms? For the first time in galactic history, the response to a council ultimatum came not in words, but in the whisper of fabric against chairs. As one, all 200 human representatives stood. The movement was smooth, unhurried, practiced to perfection through countless simulations. The chamber's acoustic enhancement system caught everything. The soft click of dress shoes on polished floor, the rustle of formal attire, the subtle sound of 200 humans breathing in perfect synchronization. But not a single word. Councillor Angst's crystalline form chimed in agitation. The council requires a verbal response. The human delegation began walking toward the chamber's grand exit. Their footsteps fell in perfect rhythm, neither rushed nor hesitant. Sarah led them, her grandmother's jade pendant catching the light with each step. The piece had survived the Cultural Revolution in China, its quiet endurance a reminder that empires rise and fall, but humanity persists. This is unprecedented. The speaker's energy form flared. No species has ever. The chamber doors opened at the delegation's approach. They had been designed to move ponderously, another reminder of the council's authority. But Earth's engineers had studied them well. Today, they parted as smoothly as elevator doors in a luxury hotel. Through quantum channels invisible to council sensors, Sarah received confirmation. Earth's financial systems were already transitioning to independent networks. Trade ships were executing course changes calculated years in advance. Research facilities were bringing classified projects into the light. The delegation reached the antechamber, their steps still perfectly matched. Behind them, the council chamber erupted into chaos. Species that had watched human development with secret admiration began whispering among themselves. Younger races exchanged meaningful glances. The Arcturian trade representative was hastily computing the financial implications. Through it all, humanity walked in silence. They reached their ships, sleek vessels that bore no council registration marks. Inside, Sarah finally allowed herself a full smile. Signal Earth, she instructed her neural interface. The council has played their part exactly as predicted. The quantum pulse reached Earth in milliseconds, undetectable through normal council channels. On every continent, hidden fabrication facilities began powering up. Underground research labs initiated projects that would reshape humanity's understanding of physics. Artists and musicians prepared to share works that blended human emotion with alien perspectives in ways the council had never imagined possible. As their ships lifted off, Sarah thought about her daughter's latest art project, a piece that combined visual elements perceivable by 12 different species simultaneously. The council had labeled it destabilizing. Soon, they would understand just how destabilizing human creativity could be. The council's ultimatum had demanded humanity's submission within 24 hours. Instead, they received silence. No protests, no negotiations, no pleas for mercy, just the echo of footsteps and the soft sound of closing doors. In the years to come, historians would mark this as the moment when everything changed. Not with grand declarations or dramatic confrontations, but with the quiet dignity of 200 humans walking away from an empire that had forgotten the difference between order and progress. The council had tried to cage humanity's potential. They were about to discover that some things become more powerful in silence than in sound, and that the greatest revolutions sometimes begin with nothing more than footsteps walking toward a door. Dr. James Okonjo stood in the heart of the global innovation hub, watching as decades of preparation unfolded on the massive holographic displays surrounding him. The facility, buried 2 kilometers beneath the Himalayas, had been built with a single purpose: independence from the Galactic Council. Project Butterfly status? He asked, his voice carrying the weight of 20 years planning. All Chrysalis sites are emerging exactly as scheduled. Dr. Yuki Tanaka responded from her station. Her fingers danced across quantum-linked interfaces, each movement triggering responses across Earth and its colonies. The Council's surveillance systems haven't detected a single one. James allowed himself a small smile. Of course they hadn't. The Council's technology looked for large energy signatures, sudden resource movements, obvious signs of preparation. They'd never understand how humanity had hidden its greatest achievements in plain sight. Shanghai Hub reporting successful transition, a voice announced. The vertical farms are now operating on independent power systems. Mars colony confirms activation of the backup atmospheric processors. Luna Base reports quantum communication network fully operational. The reports kept coming, each one representing a piece of the masterwork James had helped design. Every apparent human weakness the Council had identified was actually a carefully crafted facade. Where they saw primitive vertical farms, humanity had built self-sustaining ecosystems. Where they noticed inefficient power grids, Earth had developed zero-point energy systems, hidden within ordinary infrastructure. Dr. Okonjo called out Dr. Maria Santos, her dark eyes bright with excitement. You need to see this. The Council's trade restrictions are having an unexpected effect. The main display shifted to show economic data streams. As Council-aligned worlds began severing trade connections, Earth's internal economy was transforming. Hidden manufacturing centers were spinning up. Stockpiled resources were flowing through carefully planned distribution networks. Their restrictions are actually accelerating our transition, Maria explained. The economic stress is activating backup systems faster than our original timeline predicted. We're seeing a 47% increase in efficiency. James nodded. Even humanity's contingency plans had contingency plans. What about the cultural integration protocols? Dr. Chen Wei brought up another display, already spreading through the underground networks. 300,000 works of cross-species art and literature are being leaked through unofficial channels. The Council can't stop them without admitting they're monitoring illegal networks. The art had been created years ago, each piece designed to resonate with multiple species simultaneously. Poetry that touched both human and alien hearts. Music that spoke to souls across the galaxy. The Council had feared cultural contamination. They were about to discover just how right they'd been. Signal from the Luna Quantum Array, Yuki announced. The first independent FTL communications network is online. We're receiving messages from all human colonies and some non-human sources. That caught James's attention. Already? Which species? The Arcturian youth movements, the Centaurian scientific underground, the Regelian artistic collectives. Yuki's voice carried a note of triumph. They're not just receiving our transmissions, they're asking to contribute, exactly as the sociological models had predicted. The Council's rigid control had created a hunger for innovation across the galaxy. Humanity wasn't just breaking free. They were offering others a chance to do the same. Dr. Okonjo, Maria called out softly, we're receiving a priority message from Sarah Chen. The chief representative's hologram appeared in the center of the room. Even across millions of kilometers, her quiet confidence filled the space. Project Butterfly is proceeding as planned, she reported. The Council is reacting exactly as predicted. How long until we can begin Phase 2? James checked the status displays once more. Humanity's hidden strength was emerging like a butterfly from its chrysalis, each moment revealing new capabilities that had been carefully concealed. We're ahead of schedule, he replied. The council tried to clip our wings. Instead, they'd given us a reason to fly. Sarah's hologram smiled. Then let's show them just how high humanity can soar. Mai Zhang's garage workshop in Singapore had always been her sanctuary. Now, surrounded by scattered components and holographic diagrams, the 16-year-old prodigy realized it might also be humanity's next stepping stone to the stars. Run the sequence again, she instructed her AI assistant, Wang. The quantum entanglement matrix hovering above her workbench pulsed with possibilities. Adjust the synchronization by 0.03 picoseconds. Simulation running. Wang responded, its voice carrying the warm humor Mai had coded into it. You know, the council would have an aneurysm if they knew a teenager was reprogramming quantum physics in her garage. Mai grinned, pushing a lock of blue-streaked hair behind her ear. Good thing they're not watching anymore. She studied the simulation results, noting how the quantum particles danced in patterns that council scientists had declared impossible. Send the results to the Innovation Network. Across Earth and its colonies, thousands of other creators were doing the same. The council's restrictions hadn't crippled human innovation. They'd unleashed it. In Kenya, Dr. Amara Okafor stepped back from her soil restoration project, watching as modified microorganisms transformed dead earth into fertile soil in minutes rather than months. The council had called her methods dangerously unorthodox. Now, as her team prepared to share their techniques with struggling agricultural worlds, she wondered if the real danger had been thinking too small. The Australian outback had become humanity's greatest solar laboratory. Dr. Jake Cooper adjusted his sunglasses, watching as the nanoscale solar collectors his team had developed transformed the harsh sunlight into pure energy with twice the efficiency of council technology. The arrays looked like ordinary sand to conventional sensors, another example of humanity hiding revolutionary technology in plain sight. May, Wang interrupted her thoughts. You're receiving a priority message from the Global Innovation Hub. Dr. James Okonjo's hologram appeared above her workbench. Your quantum communication breakthrough just reached us, he said, smiling. The council's entire communication monopoly could be obsolete within weeks. Mai tried to contain her excitement. The equation suggested it was possible, but I never thought. You did more than prove it possible, James interrupted. You've opened doors the council never imagined existed. How soon can you begin production? That's the best part. Mai brought up her fabrication designs. Anyone with a basic molecular printer can build these. I made mine from recycled council tech they thought was worthless. James's smile widened. Perfect. Upload the designs to the Innovation Network. Let's show the galaxy what happens when humanity stops playing by the council's rules. The network had become humanity's greatest weapon, a decentralized web of creators sharing innovations freely. Council surveillance couldn't track it because it used May's quantum principles, spreading through normal communication channels like a benevolent ghost in the machine. In orbit above Mars, Dr. Sarah Chen watched the innovation feeds with growing satisfaction. The Council had expected Earth to bend under isolation. Instead, humanity's creative spirit had exploded like a supernova. New report from the Cultural Division, her assistant noted. The underground markets for human art and music have spread to 12 more species. They're particularly fascinated by our ability to blend multiple perceptual ranges. Sarah nodded. The Council had feared human unpredictability. They never understood that chaos and creativity were two sides of the same coin. Every restriction they placed on humanity became a challenge to overcome, every barrier an invitation to innovation. Send a message to all human worlds, she instructed. It's time for Phase 3. As her words spread through quantum channels, humanity's hidden gardens of innovation continued to bloom. Mai Zhang put the finishing touches on her quantum communicator. Dr. Okafor's team prepared to share their soil restoration techniques. The Australian solar arrays silently gathered energy for the challenges ahead. The Council had tried to prune humanity's growth. Instead, they had scattered seeds across the galaxy, and now those seeds were sprouting in ways they could never have predicted. Cull watched with fascination as her daughter, next Springbloom, adjusted the distinctly human-style jacket over her iridescent scales. The young Arcturian had been collecting Earth fashion for months now, trading precious gems for what she called vintage Earth couture. The Council says human goods are restricted. Kittal noted carefully, her secondary eyes tracking her daughter's reaction. Next Springbloom's scales shifted to a pattern that indicated amusement. The Council says lots of things, Mother, but have you noticed how even their own children are beginning to ask questions? Through the window of their high-rise apartment on Arcturus Prime, Kittal could see evidence of her daughter's words. Young Arcturians walked the crystal streets wearing Earth-inspired clothing, their scales arranged in patterns that mixed traditional Arcturian symmetry with human asymmetrical designs. Some even wore replicas of Maizong's quantum communicators as jewelry. At the prestigious Centaurian Science Academy, Professor Zix 427 faced a lecture hall of students who no longer accepted standard answers. A young Centaurian raised their tentacle appendage. But Professor, if we applied the human principle of adaptive chaos to the standard equations? Zix 427 started to give the Council's approved response about the dangers of uncontrolled variables. Then they remembered how their own research had stagnated under Council restrictions. Perhaps, they said instead, we should examine that approach. The ripples spread further. In the Regelian Arts District, creator of New Harmonies attended an underground concert where musicians from 6 species played instruments that shouldn't have worked together. The haunting melody combined Regelian ultrasonic harmonics with human bass lines and Centaurian lightwave music. "It's beautiful," they whispered to their companion. "How did we never think to blend our arts this way before?" Their companion, a young Council liaison named First Lightbreaking, made a gesture of agreement. The Council calls it cultural contamination, but I've begun to wonder if perhaps contamination isn't always harmful. On a dozen worlds, young members of Council species found themselves drawn to human ways of thinking, not through force or coercion, but through the simple appeal of seeing problems from new angles. Sarah Chen received the cultural impact reports in her office on Mars. The Council's worst nightmare is coming true, she told Dr. James Okonjo's hologram. Their own people are beginning to think independently. James nodded, his image flickering slightly through Maizong's quantum communicator. The latest data shows unofficial trade in human goods has increased 300% despite the restrictions. They're especially interested in our educational materials. Education was always the key, Sarah said, remembering how her own daughter's art had sparked interest among alien youth. The Council maintains power by controlling how people think. We're showing them there are other ways to see the universe. In her Singapore garage, Maizong was surprised to find her inbox filled with technical questions from young aliens. They wanted to know how she approached problems, how she saw past conventional solutions. Her responses, shared through the quantum network, sparked conversations that crossed species boundaries. The Council had positioned guards at their technology centers, posted warnings about human cultural influence, and increased surveillance on their youth. But they couldn't stop their people from asking questions like, why not? And what if? Phase 3 is proceeding faster than predicted. Dr. Amara Okafor reported from Kenya. Our agricultural techniques are being adapted for use on 17 different worlds, all through unofficial channels. The Council can't stop the spread of knowledge when their own people are choosing to learn. Next Springbloom adjusted her human jacket one final time before heading out to meet her friends. They gathered in hidden places to share human books, music, and ideas. They didn't see themselves as rebels, just young people eager to explore new possibilities. The Council had feared human unpredictability would destabilize their carefully ordered galaxy. They never understood that stability without growth was just another word for stagnation. As their youth embraced new ways of thinking, the real revolution was happening not in technology or trade, but in minds finally free to wonder, what if? Counselor Zix 427 stood alone in their private chamber, watching the latest reports scroll across their neural interface. Each data point confirmed what they had feared. The Council's grip on galactic civilization was slipping away, not with a bang, but with a whisper. "Display the FTL communication network status," they commanded. The holographic display materialized, showing vast sections of the Council's once monopolistic network going dark. Not failing, simply becoming irrelevant as Mai Zong's quantum communicators spread through the galaxy like dandelion seeds in the wind. A soft chime announced the arrival of High Counselor Angst. Their crystalline form caught the chamber's light, reflecting patterns of worry. The latest reports from Arcturus. "Worse than we predicted," Zix 427 replied. 70% of their youth have adopted some form of human innovation. They're not even trying to hide it anymore. The council chamber, once the heart of galactic power, now sat nearly empty during regular sessions. Member species still sent representatives, but the real decisions were happening elsewhere, in underground markets, in youth gatherings, in scientific collaborations that ignored council protocols. "We could increase restrictions," Anxith suggested, but their tone lacked conviction. "Like we did with the Centaurian Science Academy." Zix 427 brought up footage of the prestigious institution. Students openly used human mathematical models, solving problems that council methods had declared impossible. They're teaching human adaptive chaos theory in primary schools now. The images shifted to the Regelian Arts District, where a new form of entertainment had emerged. Artists projected light sculptures that combine council species' perceptual ranges with human emotional resonance. The council had banned such displays 3 times. Each ban had only increased their popularity. "Perhaps," Zix 427 said carefully, "we should consider opening diplomatic channels." "They won't respond." The speaker's energy form materialized in the chamber, dimmer than it had been months ago. "We've sent 16 official delegations. Each one returned with the same response." The plants. Anxith's crystalline form chimed with confusion. "Bonsai trees," the speaker confirmed. "Earth's ambassador Chen seems to have a fondness for them." Each delegation returns with one, perfectly maintained, shaped over decades through patient cultivation. Zix 427 accessed the Council's cultural database. The trees are a message. Human philosophers used them to teach principles of growth through gentle guidance rather than force. The speaker's energy field flickered with frustration. "We are not gardeners. We are the governing body of galactic civilization." "Are we?" Zix 427 gestured at the data streams. "Look at the tree patterns. Species are developing their own networks, independent of council oversight. The Arcturians have adopted human-style open markets. The Centaurians are sharing research freely, even the Vulcans." "Don't mention the Vulcans," Anxith interrupted. The traditionally conservative species had recently announced they were opening their first innovation exchange hub, modeled after human principles. In the silence that followed, Zix 427 received a priority alert. Another quantum communication node had gone online, this one in a system that had never officially contacted Earth. Humanity's influence was spreading faster than light itself. "We could offer concessions," the speaker suggested. "Perhaps if we relaxed certain restrictions." "It's too late for that." Zix 427 brought up an image of Sarah Chen's office on Mars. The human ambassador's desk held a collection of bonsai trees, each one returned from a council delegation. "They're not waiting for our permission anymore. They're not angry, not fighting. They're simply growing in their own direction." The speaker's energy form pulsed with resignation. "Then what do you suggest?" Zix 427 studied the bonsai trees in the image. Each one was unique, shaped by gentle guidance rather than force, growing into forms that no one could have predicted at their planting. "Perhaps," they said softly, It's time we learned how to garden. The Luna Free Innovation Exchange rose from the moon's surface like a blooming flower, its crystalline petals incorporating architectural elements from 24 species. Dr. James Okonjo stood in the central atrium, watching representatives from across the galaxy mingle freely, sharing ideas without council oversight for the first time in millennia. The Arcturian delegation has arrived, Dr. Yuki Tanaka reported, her quantum communicator humming softly. You'll never guess who's leading them. James smiled as Next Spring Bloom entered, her scales shimmering with excitement beneath her human-inspired formal wear. The young Arcturian who had once traded gems for Earth fashion now represented her entire species in the exchange. The council tried to prevent cultural contamination, Next Spring Bloom said, approaching James. They never understood that culture isn't a disease. It's a conversation. In one of the exchange's many collaboration spaces, Maison watched as a young Centaurian scientist modified her quantum communication principles to work with their species' natural light wave processing. The 16-year-old prodigy who had once worked alone in her garage now led a multi-species research team. If we combine your quantum mechanics with our photonic resonance, the Centaurian suggested, their tentacles moving with excitement, we could increase efficiency by another 400%. Traditional council science said that was impossible, Mag replied, grinning. But impossible just means no one's tried the right way yet. Dr. Amara Okafor's agricultural division had become a hub for species facing environmental challenges. Her soil restoration techniques, combined with alien biological understanding, were transforming dead worlds into gardens. The council had called her methods dangerous. Now they were saving entire ecosystems. The Vulcian delegation requests permission to share their latest research, her assistant announced. They've adapted your microorganism principles to work with silicon-based life forms. Sarah Chen observed it all from her office, now relocated to the exchange. The bonsai trees from failed council delegations had grown into a small garden, each one representing a lesson in patience and natural development. The council's latest message, she asked her assistant. Their fourth request this week to establish formal relations with the exchange. They're offering to recognize us as an independent governing body. Sarah touched one of the bonsai trees gently. Send them another seedling. Some things can't be rushed. The exchange had become more than just a replacement for council oversight. Where the council had sought to control, the exchange existed to connect. Ideas flowed freely through maze quantum networks. Art and music merged species perceptions in ways the council had never imagined possible. Technology developed not through careful restriction, but through joyful collaboration. Young Councillor Tilara, once a steadfast supporter of council tradition, now stood in the exchange's cultural center. She watched as a Rigelian light sculptor collaborated with a human musician, creating art that spoke to both species simultaneously. We thought we were protecting galactic civilization, she said to Sarah. We never realized we were stifling it. Sarah nodded toward the central garden, where species from across the galaxy gathered to study Earth's gift of bonsai cultivation. Growth doesn't need protection, it needs nurturing. The council tried to be a wall. We chose to be a garden. Above them, through the exchange's transparent dome, Earth hung like a blue jewel against the star-studded black. Humanity's homeworld had become a symbol not of rebellion, but of renaissance. The council had feared human unpredictability would destabilize their order. Instead, it had fertilized fields left barren by millennia of control. Phase 3 is complete, James reported to the exchange's governing board, now composed of representatives from 30 species. The galaxy is ready for what comes next. Sarah looked out at the gathering of species, each bringing their own unique perspective to the galaxy's greatest collaboration. The council had tried to silence humanity. Instead, they had helped create a symphony of civilizations, each playing their own part in a greater harmony than they had ever imagined possible. The former council chamber, with its soaring crystal spires and imposing architecture, had found a new purpose: Today, it served as a museum of galactic history, its halls filled with students from dozens of species, learning about both the achievements and mistakes of the past. Sarah Chen walked these halls alone, her footsteps echoing just as they had a century ago, when humanity walked away in silence. She paused before a new exhibition, The Great Renaissance, How Human Silence Changed the Galaxy. Quite a change from the last time you were here, a familiar crystalline voice chimed. Counselor Zix 427, now serving as a historian, approached with a gentle resonance. Though I notice you still wear that same subtle smile. Sarah touched her grandmother's jade pendant, worn smooth by generations of gentle handling. Some things change, others endure, rather like your bonsai garden. The chamber's once sterile antechamber had been transformed into a living artwork. Hundreds of bonsai trees, each one returned from a council delegation over the years, grew in harmonious arrangement. Species from across the galaxy came to study them, finding in their careful cultivation a metaphor for civilization itself. The last council session is scheduled for tomorrow, Zix 427 noted. They've asked you to attend. Sarah's quantum communicator hummed softly. Mai Zong's invention had become as common as clothing, connecting the galaxy in ways the council had never imagined. Through it, she could feel the pulse of human innovation continuing to spread. Show me, she requested. Holographic displays materialized around them. On Mars, Dr. James Okonjo's team had just achieved the first successful merger of human quantum physics with Arcturian crystal technology, creating computing systems that operated on thought itself. Next, Springbloom, now a senior diplomat, was presenting the breakthrough to an eager galaxy. In the Singapore Innovation Center, an aging Mai Zong mentored students from 30 species, teaching them not just technology, but the art of seeing past conventional limits. Her garage workshop had grown into a campus where creativity knew no species boundaries. The Australian outback, once Earth's secret solar laboratory, had become the galaxy's premier energy research facility. Dr. Cooper's team, now mostly non-human, had developed power systems that could sustain civilization for millennia without harming a single star. And perhaps most remarkably, Zix 427 added, bringing up another display. The Volxian High Council has just voted to replace their traditional education system with human-inspired creative learning methods. Sarah smiled at that. The most conservative species in the galaxy, choosing to embrace change, not through force, but through understanding. A small group of students passed by, their tour guide explaining how humanity's silent departure had sparked the greatest transformation in galactic history. Among them, Sarah noticed a young counselor's daughter wearing a replica of the jade pendant, a symbol of quiet strength that had spread across the stars. The council's final act will be to formally dissolve itself, Zix 427 said. They're requesting that the Innovation Exchange assume responsibility for galactic coordination, not control, but cooperation. Sarah's communicator chimed again. Dr. Okonjo's latest message. The garden is ready for new seeds. She thought of that day, a century ago, when humanity chose silence over submission. The council had expected chaos. Instead, they got growth. Slower than force, more powerful than control, as inevitable as dawn. You never answered them, Zix 427 noted. 100 years of bonsai trees, but never a word. Sarah reached into her pocket and withdrew a small package. Seeds from her own bonsai garden. Tomorrow, when they formally dissolve the council, I'll give them these. Some answers take time to grow. Through the chamber's grand windows, she could see ships arriving from across the galaxy. Not to receive orders, but to share dreams. The council had feared human unpredictability would destroy their carefully ordered galaxy. Instead, it had taught the galaxy how to grow wild and free, finding harmony not in uniformity, but in the chorus of countless voices each singing their own song. Tell them, Sarah said finally, we'll be there. After all, every ending is just another beginning.